Hello and welcome to the Big Money Stylist podcast number 26. Holy shit, Val, 26.
Time flies.
I mean, it's that when I try to think about the months, I'm like, oh my good God, we've been at this for like 6 months now.
I can't even remember a time before the podcast.
I vaguely remember a time that Garrett was here and then one day he just wasn't.
I know. We need to have him for a special guest one day.
It was really fun though. He's like, Lonnie, I'll be there in 20 minutes. He never came back again. It sounds like a fun
We're still
story.
waiting, Garrett.
The fun part of that is that's actually what happened. So, So guys, welcome to the Big Money Stylist podcast. Every single week we go over one certain topic. We go over profit is not the first one. Holy shit. Power, production, profit, and then protection. And inside of that, I don't want to say tell stories, but we just talk about a lot of things that we're seeing not only inside of our network, because in case you don't know, I'm the lead trainer for a company called BMS, and that's the methodology of natural beaded rose married to business marketing tools and tactics. And Coach Val, you are the lead trainer for Natural Beaded Rose.
Woo woo.
You've been here since the fucking beginning. You're like the OG of all OGs and everything.
Wow. Makes me sound so old.
How does that feel knowing that's your title? Val, who are you? I'm the OG.
I like it. I'm proud. I wear it with honor.
You know what? As you should, because you look nice and young. So
Thank you.
If you looked old and haggard, I would be concerned and be like,
some days I do look old and haggard, but it's fine.
No. I don't know what makeup you're wearing, but it looks really nice, just so you know.
It's only a bronzer.
God damn it. These lights are great then.
I know.
But yeah, so last week you guys heard us talk about protection and protection inside of the business and what we're building and why we are so just fucking fierce about everything all the time and how much we love it. And today we are going to be going into the topic of power. And power is something that we talk about, a lot, saying like you need to not only find power within yourself, but power inside your business and kind of inside every single role that you have inside your life, whether it's mother, it's wife, it's girlfriend, it's best friend, it's lover, I don't know, whatever you have, business owner, commission artist, like it doesn't even matter, but it's just finding power really within yourself.
Right.
So Val, when you hear power, like what does that mean to you? Like where have you seen it inside your life? Because this is huge for all of us.
Yeah. For me, power is always comes back to like confidence, to getting to that new level of confidence where you'll like own shit, own where you're at. And that's what's going to like ultimately propel you forward to making bigger, better decisions to like further your growth.
And I think it's funny because we can always go through and tell inside our classes whenever they come in. Right now, we actually have 30-day sprints going for 5 separate classes. And what's hysterical to me is one of them, which is BMS 25. So if you guys are listening, you guys fucking rock. I logged in yesterday. We have a private network where we have all of our artists. I had 418 missed messages to the point where I looked at it and I'm like, I can't fucking catch up. So I commented and I'm like, hey guys, if you need me in here somewhere about, like you just need to like let us know. And they're like, no, we're just bonding. But I read that and I'm like, that's so fucking cool.
Right.
Because not only like are they bonding now together before the class, they're doing it during like pre-training, before they come to like their real like super intense class here in Laguna. And that makes the class so much better for them.
Totally.
Like they're going to get so much more because they're slowly, and one of the girls was like, this is so great. I'm getting an ass kicking every day from everyone. I'm like, I am just so glad that this is something like we're happy about. Like I got an ass reaming today. It was awesome. I'm like, okay, welcome to BMS, guys. So inside of power, so obviously like all of the artists that we deal with, like it ranges. The youngest I think has been like 18, 19 and the oldest has been like 1,000. I'm just kidding, but I legit think she was like 60 some easily, right? Yeah, for sure. So
60s. Yeah,
so we always have like such a big range of stylists that come in, and recently, it's been coming to almost an interesting dynamic, I feel. So we have power, and the entire point of BMS is to empower someone. Correct. And be able to like move forward in a better place inside their life, in a life that they love and that they're completely obsessed with, like that's literally the entire point of BMS. But along with power itself, unfortunately, can sometimes come entitlement.
It's a slippery slope, man.
You guys start crazy on time around here.
Ani runs the show.
Have you not met me?
I feel like you start 2 minutes early.
Never.
No. Oh my gosh.
I was feeling like I was so on time today because I'm only 3 minutes late.
You are super on time.
I don't know how to respond to that one. So on time for me is 15 minutes early. If I'm on time, I'm late. So
I used to be so much better, and then it just slowly went downhill.
Nope. I looked at the clock. I'm like 10:19. I'm like 10:20, and 3, 2, 1. Off we go. I'm like, we're going. So the topic of today is power, and inside of power, entitlement. So Val, entitlement. What does that mean to you? Like what's entitlement?
Well, I feel like what we're going to be touching on is when people are finding their power, then they get it and they get a little too confident, and then they start thinking that things are like owed to them. So that's the slippery slope that you like. It's a fine line that you're walking. Like, we want to empower artists to live their best life, stand up for themselves and all of that, but you have to work hard and stuff to get to where you need to be. And it gets to this point where sometimes people find their power and they get a little lazy, and then they're just entitled. They see the end game plan and they're like, I just want that. So we've seen it a lot lately with in the network with assistants, where they are seeing what the stylist has and not really realizing what's gone on behind the scenes of what the stylist has done production wise to get to the point where they're at, and they just see that and they want that, and they think they're getting gypped or whatever, and they're like, I want that, I'm finding my power and I deserve that and I want this, and and that is where it goes to the entitlement. It's you kind of got to do your time, you got to follow the steps, follow the process to get to where that person is at. So to me, entitled is you're not really wanting to put in the work. You're you're finding your power, but you're not being productive with it. You're just I want something. I want that, but I'm not working for it. I want the end game plan, and I'm not wanting to do the baby steps to get there.
Sometimes don't you think too, when it's easy, you take it for granted. So if you're an assistant or whatever, and somebody paves the way for you a little bit, and then it makes your path a little bit easier, that's when entitlement happens. And I'll give you guys an example I see even with social media. When social media first started going, and some of the few artists or few people who built their following big real quick, and then all of a sudden the market became oversaturated and everybody was teaching classes, and everybody, and all of a sudden these artists that were making a killing had to dial it back in, because they were making great money when there was great money to be made, and they kind of it starts to have this entitled attitude. But then you have to like you said, just dial it back in a little bit.
Yep.
And I think definitely inside of entitlement, I like how you said it's feeling you're owed something when you haven't really put in the work. And I feel even sometimes when you do put in the work, you're still not owed anything.
Right.
You always reap the benefits of the hard work that comes from everything.
Right.
And so even I think something that, like you said, we've been seeing it a little bit inside of our network recently with assistants. And what I think is interesting, assistants are they can normally be a bit younger, and that's where I feel I've seen this problem with older assistants, and I've seen it with younger ones as well, where they come in, they're lead artist, their boss, the person who brought him in, has been fucking hustling for literally a decade longer than they have.
Right.
And then they see and they're like, oh, well, they get a nice car, they get this, they get that, they get weekends off. Well, I want that. If you have it, I have it. No, don't get it twisted. I've been at this 10 years longer than you.
Right.
And they literally don't see the work that goes behind that.
Right.
So how are you guys seeing this inside of not you, but our lives?
I mean, I just feel I'm constantly telling myself, be humble, dial it back in, and do the work. And sometimes it's as simple as that. I know, I felt I got to run at things pretty quick, and then I was super stagnant. And it was because I will admit I wasn't doing the work. I was doing the whole social media game and the promotion, but I wasn't I didn't have good enough teams. I didn't have good enough help. I wasn't putting in the work.
Yeah.
And so I had to give people respect, even if I didn't think I was oh, my work's way better than yours, and I've been doing hair longer than you. Because there was even young stylists, I will say, in the beginning that I was what the fuck? Why are they passing me up? You know what I mean? But they had larger teams. They were putting in more work than I was. You know what I mean? And so it's important to dial that in and be okay, I think there's a balance of having that ego. And that's important, because you have to have a little bit of an ego, I think, to do what we do and to push forward and to coach people and do that kind of thing. But at the same time, you have to dial it back in a little bit and kind of teach from the place from always where you're at. And I always think when we're not progressing in life, I always try to turn it on me. I'm okay, that's great that this is happening, but how can I flip it? Because obviously this is happening for a reason. You know what I mean? If you get stuck in entitlement, you won't necessarily grow. You'll just loop. You'll feel like you're moving fast.
Yeah.
You'll just sit and do loops. And I've experienced this. There's I kid you not. I feel it's almost like that game, pass go, collect $200. Pass, what is that, life?
Monopoly,
the game of life. And so I just feel it's true. In life, we'll think we're moving forward, and sometimes I'll be I think I'm working really hard, but I'm working in circles. And after doing that for so long, I'm what the fuck? And that usually creates a lot of breakthrough for myself. But a lot of people, I think, they confuse putting in the time with actually doing the work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you'll get people who get that entitled attitude, and they're well, I'm working circles around you. You're not working circles around me. You're just working fucking circles. So it's just, I don't know. It's just a balancing game. You know what I mean? Just progressing forward and then dialing it back in. We had a crazy client in this last week. Well, I only knew half the story. So I had to look at it and be like, okay, how can we fix this? How can I learn from this? Yeah, she may be crazy, but let's flip it. And how can I not be that arrogant asshole? How can I flip it and at least come to terms with an agreement and like figure it out and move on? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think when you do that, like that, you find more power. When you're looking at anything from like a learning experience, then you do find more power and you grow forward. But when you're looking at things of like, what are you going to do for me? You're not going to fucking grow. No one's going to do shit for you. You fucking have to do the work yourself.
It all comes down to accountability, which is funny. I was talking to one of the warriors yesterday, Gus, and we ended up on discussing Garrett's course corrections and how they come very swift. And depending on if you're a female, me, or a warrior, that really depends on which version you get. And we were laughing, and Gus was saying, he's like, every time he's like, because Garrett, when course corrects, like, it can be a gnarly smack in the face. Like, it's not always like, oh, this is great. And Val, you've been there when I've gotten them. They're not delightful and dainty because I'm a woman. I'm basically a man, guys. Like, that's, it's great. But even Gus was saying, he's like, every time Garrett's course corrected me, he goes, whether I agree or disagree with what he's saying, I'm just like, hey, thank you. Because he was like, that's literally the only way I can learn and the only way I can grow. He's like, I've been a coach for 20 years, but I've never, in me coaching and training people, I've never been coached and trained. So now coming here, he's like, now I'm receiving that. He's like, doesn't mean that the course corrections are easy. No. He's like, it doesn't mean I'm like, oh, that's great. He's like, but I always have to be like, okay. And he goes, and I always tell him, thank you for being honest. Thank you for saying that to me. He goes, and even when I don't agree with it, I'm like, well, hold on. If this is what he said to me, then what am I doing that's making it come across like that?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And even like with all of the classes that we've taken before, that they are super, like, Impact was really big on accountability. Yeah. And they were like, okay, well, look at the problem that you're having inside of your life. Like, what is it that's going on with that? Because everyone's like, well, he did this and then he did that. And that's why I responded, because they, she, them.
And it's just emotional.
Yeah. And then they're like, okay, well, look inward, motherfucker. Like, what did you do to cause this? Like, what happened? And I feel doing that, like, you and I, we looked at our own situations as well. And we were like, okay, well, maybe I wasn't exactly 100% innocent on this.
Right.
Totally.
And even now.
And the answer is, it's always you.
Sad
Spoiler alert.
Even if you still don't agree, like, you played a role in it. Like,
totally. And I feel the same way, like, on course corrections, like, we've gotten them, and I mean, mine aren't as gnarly, and like, I'm not going to say Garrett's mean to me because he's not.
Guys, I'm married to the guy, so I know they can be as swift.
But they're very direct and to the point, and swift and surprising sometimes, but I'm always like, okay. And that same response I always have, like, I'll think, like, I'll be caught off guard at first, and then I'm like, okay. And then, like, I'll think about it, and I'm like, yep, for sure. Like, I could see it from that perspective. And now I know, like, which way to, like, roll and how to progress forward. And ultimately, it's always coming from a place of, like, he's wanting us to grow, or Danielle's wanting us to grow. So I'm always, like, taking it. I think, too, when you respect the person who's giving you course corrections, then it makes, like, the world of difference, Right. But every single time, like, I can put it, whether it's something that goes on with a client, if it's something that's happening with Jill. So it's whether it's someone who's above me, or not that Jill's below me, but she's who I'm training. But if there's a problem in any situation, what am I doing? And I'm the only one who could, like, fix the end result. I can't change how you're going to behave. I can't change how you're going to behave. I can't change how Jill's going to behave. What I can change is, like, me for a different reaction from other people, And that part, I always say, that is so freeing. When you take the accountability, so many more opportunities open up. And when more opportunities open up, there's even more room for growth.
Right. And it's funny. It's interesting, too, because, like, you can't necessarily learn in life if you have all the answers. Like, you're going to fuck it up at some point.
Yeah.
But it's how you deal with it when shit does go sideways.
Totally.
And that creates a difference of moving forward or moving in circles, in my mind.
Definitely.
Because you'll think you resolved something, and then it just sits in circles until it pops up again, and then you're like, shit. And finally, it's like, you have to really, like, look at yourself, and that's when you're like, okay, I'm complete with that. I'm done with that. Let's move forward. And it's literally like, I feel like a weight's lifted off my shoulders at any time in my business. When I feel like that, I'm like, oh, okay, it feels so good to just be like, no, I'm not fucking doing this anymore, or whatever it is, and just kind of move forward. I keep thinking about the thing in the live mastermind.
Oh,
yes, good well, times. And even when I go through and I think of entitlement, I will never forget that Garrett and I had a discussion on something for I don't even know what reason. Oh, I think we were sitting down and making the list of, like, our top students, and no offense, bottom students, but guys, if there's top, there's always bottom. Sorry about that. I don't know what to tell you. But making, like, but almost like the personality traits to every student.
Right.
And one of the biggest ones that we found with the top, like, I think it was like 5 students that we chose, was gratitude with everyone. And I think that's something super cool. I've come to realize, like, the people who are the least, like, you and I feel like we will never come a place of entitlement, because not only do we fucking hustle and work, oh my good God, like, it's literally never ending. We've been at headquarters since what, like, I've been there since 7:30 this morning. You were there at like 8:30. Like we've been there all morning. But even inside of that, like we always look and we always tell Danielle and Garrett, thank you, not to be like ass-kissing, but like this is so fucking cool. Like the opportunity we've had, like it's not that we've been handed anything, but we've been offered an opportunity. They've said like the door's open, you can step through or you cannot. We've literally run through every single time. But I just feel like the team members I've seen that I'm like, you're for sure going somewhere. You're going somewhere. It's so much gratitude that I see from them. And once again, it's not like ass kissing, but it's just like, hey, like, thanks for this or teaching me this or showing me this or opening this door. And I think that when I don't see that in someone, I'm like, oh shit, you're for sure going to turn into an entitled dickhead. Like I can start picking it out so quickly now when someone can't even be like, hey, thanks for showing me or teaching me or welcoming me to the team, like whatever it is. And now like, I know we've seen it inside the network. Like we can pick it out so quickly now. Like how do you guys feel about like gratitude versus entitlement?
Well, obviously, I vote for gratitude.
Well, I know. I mean, what have you seen with people who are more like gracious and have more gratitude as opposed to those who are just like, well, yeah, I'm here.
Well, it's the same, like how we're so big on like the universe and the vibe. So like when you're in that gratitude motion, like I notice when I'm like acknowledging the smallest details of things that I'm grateful for, like so many other things I'm like noticing because I'm in that mindset of gratitude. And I just feel like when I stay in that place, then like so many more opportunities always like open up. And I know if an opportunity presents itself, like I know my work ethic and my hustle, like I'll always like do the best that I can on my end, and I will always like do anything, even if it's uncomfortable, in the name of like growing, you know? So I just feel like when for me personally, if I'm showing that gratitude, like I just stay on that course and more opportunities do open themselves up. If I'm standing there and I'm like, God, why am I not as successful as this person? And like looking at it in that, then that's never benefited me. So I learned that super early on. And so I don't even allow myself to like go to that place. And then I see it like, because I've been on both sides of that, I can spot it in people when they come in the network and I'm like, oh, when they're like waiting for something like, I notice too when people are focusing on like the wrong things. And I'm like, that out of everything that we taught you, this is like your takeaway from it. Like you're not going anywhere, like not with that mindset. Your mindset actually didn't. And if your mindset doesn't shift, your work, like all the other opportunities, nothing new is going to come to you because you didn't actually have that mind shift. So then what you're doing, you're like Danielle was saying, you're just going to be in that loop. You're going to be doing the same thing because you didn't actually have that mindset shift.
Don't you think some people, and I always throw myself under the bus, I experienced it where I thought, I'm like, I am doing the work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's hard for me when I see somebody who they don't even see what, like, we can spot it in a way. I feel like I can spot it because it's like something that I went through myself. And at some level, I'm sure we all have. And so it's hard when somebody's like going in that circle and they can't see that they're going in that circle. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm like, how do you, like, you have to snap yourself out of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think the biggest part for me is that you have to be open to feedback. Like being open to feedback is huge because if people can communicate with one another, like if it's a stylist and an assistant, and they can actually communicate their problems on both ends, the likelihood of it is that you'll grow faster together than you would alone. And same thing goes with our teams. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if everybody kind of dials it back in and they work on feedback and communication, then that really ultimately like benefits you too. And then when you move forward and you're not circling anymore and you can see the growth that you've had, that's where I can look back and be grateful that I was willing to put in the work and let go of my ego and dial it back in order to move forward. And I know we talked about this in our last show, but sometimes you have to take a step back to take 3 leaps forward.
Totally.
And it's so true. And just because you speak it and you feel it in your heart, if you're not fucking doing it, you're not making the mind shift. And it is what it is. If you're not growing, then ask yourself why you're not. If you're in a huge fight with your assistant, take accountability on both roles.
Definitely.
You know, and I just think a lot of times it's like people are like, oh, well, it just goes to the senior stylist or the whoever's in charge. But I'm like, well, I have to take accountability for assistants I had in the past that I probably created a fucking monster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there's times with the assistants where I'm like, we can't go back from where we've been. Like now we've collided too much at this. And same thing goes with marriage. And it's like, I'd be better off to go find somebody else and rebuild it. Like we can't unsay or undo what's happened. So I have to move on and go find a new assistant, or I have to, if in a marriage situation, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even it did happen for Garrett and I. Like there was so much hard times for us. And it was like, okay, would it be easier to go rebuild? And there was a few times where I thought it probably would, but then we both decided to put back in the work and make it work.
Yeah.
So it's just relationships with whether it's in hair or not. It's just interesting, and life in general, it all works the same way whether you do hair or you do not.
Totally.
Well, and inside of relationships and how you said assistants and things like that, BMS has recently taken a new stance because we have a lot of artists coming in, guys. We are rolling. I mean, we're at 270, 280, something like that. I mean, we have a lot of artists inside our network now. And how this started off was like generally one person comes to one of our classes and then they invite a friend or then they bring their assistant and it's all great and everything's super chummy and fine. But realistically, like shit can just go sideways super quickly depending on the person. And that's why even today is so much about entitlement because it's something that we've been seeing. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, a lot of times with the younger crowd. Like it just is. I realize that I'm considered a millennial here, but I feel like it's like the even younger millennial generation. Or, this sounds terrible, even like a little bit of an older generation. I feel like somewhere in the middle, they're generally
they're
pretty
too
cool.
deep or they're not far enough in.
Yeah. And that's
too much life experience where they're like totally set in their ways and not willing to grow and do things differently. Or too new that they're just like, I want that. And it's like you don't have enough life experience
behind
to like
It throws me off when it's the older one. When it's the older one, I'm like, what the fuck? Are you 18? You're 60. What? Maybe next lifetime. Like, work on it then.
Yeah, but that's really exactly what happens. And I feel like the middle-aged, like middle crowd, I feel like there's one or two here or there that I'm like, did you just fucking say that to me? Which we'll be talking about this in the next podcast, don't you worry. But I'm like, what?
Ooh.
And it
No, sorry, I got a really good point, but keep going.
Okay, and it like blows my mind. But inside of that, here's a stance we've now taken inside of BMS. So if you are the lead artist who came to us, you're the salon owner, you're the very first one, you're the OG who came to us, number one, and then you bring your teams or you bring your assistants. If shit goes sideways, that cannot be remedied because we're not about like divorce or like leave everyone. We are really big on like work it out, talk. Like that's what communication is all about, and owning a business and being a business owner. That if they can't work it out and we can't assist inside of that, then the assistant or the second person that came in, they automatically get dropped from the program. Not because we don't love them, not because we don't like them or respect them, but BMS, we are not getting in the middle of it. And you guys know, like, I'm super, super big on vibes, like on everything. And I've warned people inside the network before. I understand you two work together and you guys are having hard times. If any of this shit gets brought into my network, you are both dropped fucking immediately.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what if it's like the primary stylist and they're being an asshole? Do you drop both of them?
Here's what happened. So number one, we recently just had that happen. Yeah. So the lead artist and her assistant were really having it's not going great. And here's what happened. I'm sure that the assistant she's actually a really nice girl. Like I know who she is. She's one of our stylists, but not inside DKW. Don't let me clear that up.
Who was it?
She's one of the artists inside the network, but she felt that the commission she was getting was not fair. Now here's the deal. We at DKW have done numbers upon numbers upon numbers, and we know exactly what is and is not fair inside of everything. What she was getting was fair. But here's the problem. When you hear the number, she's like, I don't fucking want that. I want more.
Yeah.
Because when you're an assistant or when you're an employee, you don't realize how much goes into actually running a business. It's not just like, I showed up and bought hair and color. Let's do it. Cool. There's still electricity. There's water. There's gas. On top of that, there's taxes and everything else that people don't see. So they're like, what do you mean my commission is 60-40? You get 60% of all my work? Yeah, motherfucker, this building, I'm paying for it and everything inside of it. But that's really hard for some people to like gauge and understand. So here's what happened. We ended up letting the assistant go, and I sent her an email and CC'd her with like everyone in our team and just said, hey, like, just so you understand, like, you are bringing this to a legal battle, which I don't know if she has footing or not. I'm not getting involved in that. I'm like, but BMS will not be put in the middle of it. So we love you. You're great. And if this gets settled, we
work it out.
We would love to have you back someday. Like, I have nothing against her.
Right.
But then I also sat down with the lead artist and I'm like, here's the deal. I've already let your assistant go for mastermind, so now we need to have a talk. We will back you on this, but and Garrett phrased it, he's like, it's just like a kid. Like when your kid's being a total piece of shit, you're like, I love you, but I'll still like beat your ass and ground you, you know? Like that's just what this is. So I'm like, we need to have a talk now. What are you doing? Yeah. Because if I find out that you've lied to me or you are actually really in the wrong here, you will for sure be dropped from the network too. I feel like what I expect, like the expectations I have for myself inside of my life and like the honesty and integrity that like I want to do everything with, I expect that from my artists as well. So I'm not going to sit here and condone, let's say like our lead artist was the one in the wrong, then I'm not going to condone dropping the assistant and then keeping the lead artist. Like, no, you were wrong. You were a giant piece of shit. You're leaving too.
Yes.
So this is just now the new stance we have to take because it needs to be just integrity across the board.
Right.
So what's this point you had to make, or is it gone now?
God. It was really good.
Oh.
It'll come back. I was like, oh.
You're like, damn it. So, Val, what have you been seeing with like the artists who, whether they're young or older, I don't care about their fucking age, but who come into the program and they really don't understand what it takes to like run a business?
Okay, I got it.
All right,
Sorry.
go ahead. Before she loses it.
I just had
Quick.
I had another point that came back too, because I think a lot of artists think like, oh, I'm going to just do booth rent. I don't want to do commission. And even inside of my own teams, I'm like, we're not a booth rent salon anymore. Sorry. But I think we have to be, again, like so clear about the numbers to the point where we're like, okay, here's your commission, but here's what you would make in a month. If you fill your books on these days based on this commission, here's what you make. Would you like to make this much money? You can just like come in and work and do the art. Like 9 out of 10 times if you showed somebody like the numbers. And for me, I'm like, oh, okay, I committed to that. So I'm going to up my marketing. I'm going to try and get more leads in, and I'm going to live up to my end of the deal, which is like, I got to put more clients in the chair. You know what I mean? But it would be hard I'm trying to put myself in both shoes in both situations, and not particularly with this person in the mastermind, because I don't really know the whole story. But I know that this happens in our industry across the board, where salons will build up their team, and then the teams can get like a little bit like arrogant, and they're like, you don't treat
Entitled.
me good, and yeah, and they're just like, fuck you, I can do it on my own, and they leave. And it gets to the point where the lead owner is like, that's fine, I don't want you working here anyways if you're going to have that energy and that attitude anyways.
Yeah.
And they would rather burn it and rebuild it, because at least they learn some things and they know how to rebuild it. And they might have to take a step back for a minute, but I guarantee those that have done that, you give them another some more time, they're gonna learn and grow from that. So I always just wonder, like in that situation, I'm like, how, like, as for me, like, I feel like our business, we always like paint the picture, like we're like, hey, here's the commission, this is where it's going. But if you can consolidate your days and you can do this, it's really like you're going to be making pretty close to the same. You know what I mean? If not more, if we could have more opportunities with education and things like that. You know what I mean? So I always wonder if, like, I don't know. I just always wonder if that's like something in our industry that could just, going back to, again, better communication, taking accountability, painting a bigger vision, but not just like painting a vision, like switch your mind shift and we're going to do it together. Like factually showing them, if we do this based on this, here is what you could make. That's huge. And you can't just say, well, I'm paying the fucking water bill, so bitch, you're going to get 40%. Like that's not going to work. Right. And I'm not saying that they're going to say it like that. Right. But sometimes, like, I get it. For years, I built my entire business on booth rent because I was like, that's not fair. I could do it on my own. And I did do it on my own. And then the minute I decided to own a salon, I was like, well, shit, no wonder salon owners have to do like a commission base, because there's not a lot of money in salons. You've got to be really strategic and really smart if you want a super successful salon. And so now it's like going the way of like, either you go big or go home, or you're kind of in like a smaller boutique situation. So I don't know, just kind of like putting it out there. I always just kind of like wonder, because I'm always looking to as a problem in an industry is this something like with BMS? I'm like, no, I'm here to like, I want to take a problem and figure it out, not just for me, but for our industry. Yeah. So that's kind of how I always try to approach things. So I just like, I don't know. I'm just rambling at this point, but
no, you're not.
It's
It's fine.
It's good rambling.
I like it.
I like the rambling. Val?
What?
I had come to you about and I was saying that it doesn't matter like the age, but what have you seen like inside of like entitlement, like people who don't understand like how to run a business and what it actually takes?
They either learn it, like I didn't know about it, like same thing, I always did booth rent and I never like owned my own salon, and now like that I've been like with DKW for so long and I've seen and I've done like the salon managing side and seen like the back end, I know that I hate that shit. And I will happily pay someone else, like give a cut of my commission for them to handle that, because that is not where I thrive and that isn't where I want to like make money. I do like Danielle was saying, if you paint the vision of like, you just get to show up and do the art and then this is taken care of, like I love that about the salon, that I can come there and I get to do amazing hair and everything else is kind of like handled for me, and I just get to do the art and I'm not having to do the back end. There is a price tag that is on that back end, and I will happily pay that.
I've been that way.
I hate it so much, but and so I feel like if people stick around, they would see that. So like the assistants, they might just see like, oh, my boss has a nice car, but you're not seeing the back end of like all of it. So if you stick around long enough, you might see that and have more appreciation. That's one thing that could happen, and their mind shift can change, and you kind of like, oh, okay, now I'm seeing like how this is. Or two, they leave and they think they could do it on their own, and they might have learned a few things on the way, but if they left so early, they really don't have a ton of like new things, new game plans to like implement, and they're gonna fall on their face pretty fast, and then karma. Enjoy. Where you kind of realize,
it's that entitlement, and then they probably like look at you like, oh, she didn't help me at all, and you're like, you didn't help yourself.
Yeah,
like,
you didn't stick it out.
You didn't stick it out. You didn't help yourself. So now you're in the circle again. How's that circle treating you? Hope that merry-go-round is working out well.
Well, and I think that's always so interesting, like when it comes to actually doing work, that people, not only that, I feel like there's definitely a lack of communication. Like honestly, if you're curious, I know we can always come to Danielle and be like, hey, like with our commissions that just changed to 25, if we had sat down and been like, wait, what? Can you explain this to me one more time? You and Garrett would have been like, yeah, no problem. Here's what it was. Here's why it didn't work. Here's everything we're paying. Here's what we're going to.
Right.
And it would have been like that's not like a heated conversation, but I feel like sometimes if the artists or assistants would just be like, hey, I hear you saying 60-40 after hair costs, but why? And say, okay, cool, not a big deal. Once again, you have to lay out the numbers and really look at it.
And it'll put the business owner in a place of like, well, let me see why. Do you know what I mean? And even for us, when we made like commission changes, I was like, I literally like lost sleep over it. I created like 17 different price arrangements and did this, and I'd send it to Colin and Jeff and Mackenzie, and I was like, I don't know, because I love my team so much. I was like, I want them to be with me. But at the same time, I think a lot of business owners will sacrifice themselves for so long thinking things will turn over, and then it doesn't. And then they're like, I'm fucked, everybody's fired, see you later. It's no longer benefiting me. And that pain is hitting so hard that they maybe haven't been profitable for years. Like I know a lot of salon owners that are like just break even, then all of a sudden they're just like, bye, see you later, I can't do this anymore. And so it's that balance. Like even for me, I was like, we have to do this, but we have to figure out what exactly our numbers are and what we would shift it where it still makes sense to everybody, and we have to show them that. You know what I mean? So I think as a business owner, you have to take that accountability as well and show them that, and so that you can have that direct conversation and they can be like, well, why? Okay, well, I'm glad you asked me that, Sally, because I spent 17 hours on it last week, and here's the scenarios I came up with. Yep. And then they might have appreciation for like, oh wow, okay, thank you. You know what I mean? So it's funny too, because I feel like I was laughing yesterday when we were at the salon, and now Mackenzie's our new salon manager. I love you, Mackenzie. And I was like, me and Val are very similar in the sense that like we're like detailed, but not. I don't like that.
I'm like, don't you give Val detailed. I'm gonna start shaking my head.
Yeah,
going,
well, you know what I mean. Like it's just like we're more into the art and the vibe and the feel, and not to say that like it's just like there's some things that it's not your thing. And so like salon managing for either of us, we want to like rip our hair out, like the little details of like we don't have a 1-0. What the fuck? We don't have a 1-0 in the salon. I have a client sitting in my chair. I'm texting Mackenzie. I'm like, hi, how are you? I need you to drop whatever the fuck you're doing. I'm just gonna need you to run to the store right now, and I'm gonna need that in 15 minutes. So like little shit like that I hate doing. And this is the point I was going to make. So as like a business owner or a salon owner, or even if you're like an independent artist, I think that people are so funny about like they don't want to like cut any of their costs, and so they don't like delegate anything, but then they're like going crazy. Like they're literally like they're the salon manager, they're the hair rep, they're wearing too many hats. And I don't care how much money you're making when you're wearing like 15 million hats, you're like, I don't want to fucking do this anymore. And so in delegating, that's when it's like, you're like, oh, my team has released so much stress from me and it's so great. And then all of a sudden you got to look at the numbers, you're like, oh, fuck. I hired him, but now I'm not making any money. So we got to dial this back in. And that's how you learn and grow. And that's how you figure out a successful business. And I think for Garrett and I, we've come to this point where we're like, we're too deep. We'll fucking figure it out no matter what it takes. You know what I mean? We've gone through the loop so many times that now we recognize when we're in the loop and we're like, all right, shit's got to change and we got to collide. And it's interesting. You're like, Garrett has a swift collide. I'm like, but he's like my bad cop, good cop. Like, he has to be that person. And that's even why I like had brought him into the business, because I was like, I need you to be a part of this. You know what I mean? And that's really like where things have started working and things have started taking off. And for years, I was like ready to like throw in the towel. I was like, I don't fucking know. I've been hustling for like 3-5 years. And like, I feel like I'm running in circles. You know what I mean? But I had to realize with myself, I had to let go of ego. I had to let go of entitlement. I had to hire more people on. I had to commit to doing something different and putting in the work and hiring people, a team on to help me do it. And so that's where we're at now. And so I can see the growth. And the minute I like even like kind of let go of all that, all of a sudden I feel like we're like, phew, and people are like, what's this MBR? And I'm like, motherfuckers, I've been doing this for like 7 years and it just started taking off in the last 2. So anyway, rambling Danielle today.
Welcome back, Danielle. Well, and even like you said, like with Mackenzie having the salon manager role, Val, when you were salon manager, I know you were borderline suicidal, but I think it's funny because sitting on the outside, you're sometimes like, it's not that bad. Like you just get color and stuff. But then once you see it, there. Because I mean, to be honest, there's a team member that said, I can't believe Ani gets paid to sit behind a computer. I'm like, you motherfucker, if you knew what I did daily, I can guarantee you wouldn't be talking shit like that. But doesn't matter. But I think that's what's so interesting, that people look from the outside and they're like, oh, well, it's not that hard. You're just doing hair. You're just assisting. You're just sitting behind a computer. You're just doing whatever. But it's like, you don't realize, like even a salon owner, oh, well, you're a salon owner. Like who cares? Like, but no one sees,
they don't see the stress,
the sacrifice, the stress, the work work that goes behind literally
Right.
every single step of the way. And I think that's when like entitlement comes in super strong. Well,
Right. I could do that.
Yes.
Then do it, motherfuckers.
I would like to see someone do my fucking job.
We've said the F word a lot on this show.
At this point,
It's explicit.
if you are still triggered by the word fuck, I do not know how you've been 26 episodes in, guys. Like, what fucking killed me, there's another one, is Garrett, when you guys were doing the hot seat on Monday, one girl commented, she's like, can you please watch the F-bomb because I'm watching it at a dining room table with kids? And Garrett's like, I've never said the F-bomb, but I have said fuck, and I will not watch it. Your kids probably shouldn't be listening to me say the word fuck. I was like, oh, shit.
Earmuffs, kids, earmuffs.
And he's like, I don't censor myself around my kids. I'm not going to do it around yours. I'm like, I respect that attitude, and I like it because...
I do tell Garrett, I'm like, I don't care if you swear. Like when Ruby said fuck the other day, I was like, Garrett, we're going to need you to dial in the fucks at home. Like, I get it. We can say it at work, but like, let's put earmuffs on him. Let's just dial in the fucks at home. When your 7-year-old's like, fuck you, Mom. I'm like, oh.
Number
Oh,
one.
sweet Ruby.
Oh, sweet Ruby. It's okay. That LOL doll's head will go right back on.
Number one, I'm going to beat your ass. Number two, I'm going to go talk to your father
It was
because...
so cute, though. I had to laugh. I was like, I think my 7-year-old just told me to fuck off. I just like had to hold in the laughing, and I was like, you go to your room.
This was Cinco de Mayo. I was at Belle's house when I was about to leave, and her 4-year-old son was riding a little tricycle down the street, and I was like, Lennox, say, hey, motherfuckers, or, hey, fuckers. And he looked at me, he's like, I don't want to say a bad word. And I'm like, okay, fine. And Val's like crying, laughing. My defense, she was standing right beside me. She heard me saying it. He tricycled away about 3 feet, went in reverse, came back, and he goes, hey, fuckers. And then, whoom, like drove right off. I almost peed my pants. And then he went a little loop around the little cul-de-sac, came back. Guys, you need to watch what I'm doing right now. Go to bigmoneystylistnow.com if you have not. Pause this shit and then go watch it. As he goes and tricycles around the little cul-de-sac, he comes back around. Oh, yeah.
Little
And
swag.
He's legit. He's tricycling by, starts waving. He's like, hey, fuckers. I'm like, oh my God, he did it twice. And that was the same.
When you laugh, they want to keep doing it, Val. Then they think they're funny.
It is funny.
He's so damn cute, though. Like, you really
Have you seen his face? I cannot be mad
Did
at
he have
it.
like a little hat on? I could just like
Always.
see him.
Yes.
Little swimsuit and hat, just like.
My favorite, which we're coming to the end now, but one more story. My favorite is when I was at your house one day, and he was in his little like Jeep, Mercedes, BMW. What the fuck does he have? A little car thing, like the kid car thing that's like electric.
Power wheels, you know.
Power
Yeah,
wheels.
that thing. And he's like riding down the street, and they're trying to bring him back because it's remote controlled, and the remote control died. So, and they're like, Lennox, come back. And he literally, please guys, go to bigmoneystylistnow.com and watch this. And all of a sudden, he's coming back, and Val's like, Lennox, you gotta come back, man. Like, come back, buddy. And he comes back, and he just looks at her, driving into the garage, and he just goes, and then just keeps driving. He fucking mugged her, and he might as well have had just one arm on the steering wheel,
Yeah,
like pumping
right.
music, because he was like G'd out that day. He's a very cool kid. So with that being said,
It's
okay.
gonna be trouble.
Gonna be. We're already mid trouble.
Going to be is, but he's my fave. Like your kids
Same.
they're the best. So last words, Danielle, and then Val, I'll go to you too. Entitlement and power.
Entitlement and power. Just always, I think I said it earlier in the show, like always dial it back in, always be willing to kind of be humble, work hard, and go about with the energy of gratitude, and you'd be surprised.
I would love fries.
If you'd like some fries, go to bigmoneystylistnow.com. If you'd, you'll be surprised how doing like little things like that will actually kind of push you forward in life. And it sounds weird, but even in my mind when I'm like stressed out, I'm like, fucking crazy ass bitches, this is not worth it. I'm like, and like it's like this little voice comes to me and it's like, yes, you can do this, and that's why you're where you are, is because you're willing to kind of like get to that point, let it go. And I'm like, and I go to this like little short meditation mode where I'm like, okay, be you, be humble, be strong, go. You know what I mean? And like saying little things like that to myself, it's like, okay, breathe, like take a deep breath, breathe, go in, and so much can happen. And I think that people often quit when things get tough. And so I would encourage you, if you're listening to this, if you're triggered as fuck, like maybe let go of that and dial it back and see where that takes you in life. So
Beautiful. Val, power and entitlement.
Entitlement won't help you grow any. So just don't be entitled for anything. Look at yourself. Be accountable. What can you do? Work for it. Nothing's going to get handed to you. But if you work for something, you will grow and you will find your power in that. You will not find your power with an entitled attitude.
Perfect. So here's what I want you guys to consider. I really want you to go through and maybe even get a journal out. And I tell everyone, go to your place where you feel calm, where you feel happy, where you feel like kind of like a king or a queen. Go to the spot and really take a look at yourself, not anybody else inside of your life. No more pointing fingers, but look inward, look at you. Where in your life do you know that you have power, but where in your life have you been kind of a dickhead and you've been more so entitled than anything else? And on that note, thank you for joining us at the Big Money Stylist podcast, and we will see you next week.